Hello, welcome to this Qualoupe class in which we're going to be looking at the Material Manager. So I shall launch the Material Manager from its icon. So here we have the Material Manager screen. Now the material is a collection of test methods gathered together. So it might describe a product specification. So it might be all the tests you perform on a product, and this could be a product that you're making and sending out, or it could be a raw material, either one made by yourselves or brought in from a supplier, or it could just be a suite of tests which are collected together. For example, a set of tests to use for calibrating an instrument or something like that, or background tests in your lab. You might do a weekly set of swabs around a micro lab just to ensure your background contamination level is low, so you might just gather those together into a material. So I shall create a new one, so we'll click on New Record. This is going to be a product, so my product is gearbox oil, and this is going to be a set of tests done on gearbox oil after a certain number of hours running, just to test for wear and performance of the oil. There's various descriptive information you can add. So we've got a material code. So if your product has got an internal code number you use for a product code, we can enter that. So here's my product code, and you can enter units if appropriate. So seeing as this is actually a product which is obviously liquid, we can add some units. So we'll go volume, litres. Sorry, the screen goes black for a minute, it's just catching up. So save changes. So while that's saving, I can also put in a description if I think that will help me. So I'll go tests done on used oil after okay, that describes what this material's designed for. And on the right here we have a box labelled category, and you can assign your material to one or more categories. So if I show you the click down list, you can see on this list we have consumable, finished product, instrument maintenance, an assortment of different categories that you can add. You can add one or more of these. Also, you can add, these come from the lookup table, so you can add more if something that you want to use isn't available. So I'm going to say this is QC and add it. So QC is now added, my description has been updated, so I'll save my changes. Okay, so that's the basic descriptive information. Now there's another layer to this. Under Material Manager we have specification, and the specification is where you actually add your methods that you want to do, and you can put limits in, so it is the specification for this test. So if I add one, it'll become a bit more clear. So I'm going to call this one, remember this is my oil testing, so this is going to be the tests that have to be performed after 500 hours. I could put a description in here. I think that's quite self-explanatory. I can flag it to say this is going to be the default specification, but I can leave that unflagged for now. So save my changes, and then I can, I should say I can also, if your specification is a customer specification, so say your specification was product testing and you had a product that you sent to one customer, and that customer wanted additional testing done, or testing done to different limits, perhaps because they were in a different market, a different country, you can associate the specification with the company. At the bottom here we've got business unit name, and if you click on the plus button you can assign companies. I'm not going to do that on this one, it's not appropriate. My screen is flickering a bit, that's a bit weird. Okay, so if I go to tests, I can now append a test group, in other words add my methods to my specification. I'll just drag this top bit of the screen up a bit so we can see a little bit more of the bottom of the screen. Okay, so append test group. So I'm going to add, I don't have many methods in this test system. We'll have appearance, save my changes. You'll notice this actually says test group and not test. I did mention test groups in the Methods Manager. This is because you could have various methods all testing the same thing, different weights, different analysis. It just depends on the protocol you're using, so you could group them all together under a test group. It just so happens in this system it's got a one-to-one test group to method name ratio, so the name of my test group is actually the same as the name of my method, so it makes life easier for this demonstration. So we'll add metals, and finally I'm going to add pH. Save changes. So I've got my 3 test methods now added to my specification, and I can edit these. I can add test limits, and I can explore them by, if I highlight each individual method, the list of parameters appear. So appearance has got 1 parameter, but metals I know has got multiple parameters. So I'll go back to appearance again. In fact, I won't. I shall go to pH. If we highlight that parameter, you can see it gives you more information here. Method name, pH, and the version 2. So you can tell what version is on a specification, because later on the version gets changed. The specification might be out of date, so you can check up on it. So if I've got the parameter highlighted and I click on parameter details, I'll just wait for that screen to come up. There we go. It tells you names pH, the units of measure. Well, we can change them at this stage, but pH doesn't have units, so we'll leave that out. Decimal precision, same thing again. Now we've got a limits tab. If I click on that, you can see we have detection limits set for this method. I could add additional limits at this stage, but I won't do them for pH. I'll close that. If I go to, thinks I've made a change. There we are. If I go to metals and I click on copper, view parameter details, same thing as before. But if I go to limits, there are no limits set from the method. The pH limits were inherited from the method, but this one has nothing set at method level, which means I can add a new limit. So I'm going to click on plus, and I'm just waiting for that screen to pop up. Here it comes. And I'm going to add a specification limit of type less than, and I'll say 300. I know this is parts per million because that's what the units are for my parameter. Continue. So I'm saying my limit value is 300 and my result has got to be less than 300 parts per million. Oh, it hasn't set to fail. Hang on a minute. I'll set up another one on another method to show you that again. Sorry, another parameter. we go to lead, limits tab, same thing again, add the limit, specification is already highlighted because that was the previous one I selected, so if I just double click on it, that should just load that up. Type less than. If I hover the mouse over that, a little dialog pops up to just tell you, confirm what that limit type is, and it's saying results less than this value will pass, which is what we want because this is an upper limit. Value 300. I'm going to check the fail parameter checkbox in this case. I'll go into more detail on limits in another Qualoupe class for now, but we'll just leave it at that. Continue. Continue. Waiting for the screen to catch up and save changes. Okay, so I've created my specification, I've added 3 methods to it, and I've edited the limits on the metals method. So if I'm happy with that, this specification can be edited as long as it's status N for new, but once I'm ready to use it, I can highlight that, and from the list that appears, select Approved, and then save my changes. And I now have a specification which is approved, so I can view the details but I can't edit them. But I can now use this specification on a sample. Now, you can actually have multiple specifications for one material, so I could click on Add Specification, and we could have, in the same vein as the previous spec, I could create another spec, and then I can add methods to that. Same methods, different methods, perhaps different test limits. So you can have multiple specifications on one material. I think we'll leave it at that for now. And thank you for looking at this. I hope it was helpful.